out Johann Zarco, a wet weather specialist himself, the Frenchman, at the end of that dramatic Q2 session this morning. Packed grandstands. Have to say, this does not feel like a sprint Saturday here in Jerez. This feels almost like a Grand Prix Sunday, because it is jam-packed at the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto. 12-lap Tissot sprint coming your way then in just over 25 minutes time. Marc Marquez, Johann Zarco and Fabio de Gianantonio, currently top Ducati rider in the World Championship, is your front row of the grid. World Champs leader Marco Bezzecchi heads row 2 in 4th place. Talking you through all of this afternoon's action, Matt Burton Lewis still to be in the commentary box, Jack Appleyard down in pit lane. Super special scenes, a super special atmosphere, a carnival, festival, fiesta feel, as always, to this Spanish Grand Prix. And let's hope those fans are going to get treated to more spectacular MotoGP action in our 12-lap sprint coming up shortly.
Yeah, there are a few atmospheres like the Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez, and there are a few venues where we see the circuit so full of spectators on Saturday afternoon. Just gives you the idea of what kind of atmosphere we're in for tomorrow. Grandstands will be packed at the top of the hour for the Tissot sprint. We've had all sorts of conditions already today. We've had the raincoats and the umbrellas up this morning. We've had the sun cream applied and the shirts off already over the course of Moto3 and Moto2 qualifying this afternoon. We're not quite sure which of those two conditions we're ultimately going to get for the sprint, because it could go either way.
Yeah, a little bit of blue skies emerging through what has been seemingly endless cloud cover since we first arrived here in southwest Spain. Marc Marquez then on the front row of the grid, heading the front row of the grid. A career pole position 75 now in MotoGP for the 33-year-old Spaniard. His first pole position though in 8 Grand Prix since he started at the front of the pack at the Balaton Park circuit in Hungary. And he has got some big contenders behind him. The Gianantonio looks in great form, probably in the form of his MotoGP career right now. There are plenty of teams and bosses seeking the signature of Digia in 2027. He's put the VR46 Ducati on the front row of the grid for the 3rd Grand Prix in a row.
And it would appear from what went on in qualifying earlier on today, we'll hopefully be able to put a bit more meat on the bones as we go through the build-up to this sprint. There's a bit of needle between Marc Marquez and Fabio de Gianantonio. We've already seen some incidents and battles between the two of them, the battle for the sprint victory and for the final podium place in the Grand Prix in Goiânia. And of course Marc crashed and took out Digia in the sprint last time out in Austin, Texas. So there is certainly a bit of competitive rivalry between Ducati's world champion and their current leading rider in the championship.
Hard to believe I'm saying this, but we're in round 4 in 2026, but the only podiums that Marc Marquez has scored so far this year have come on sprint Saturdays. Second he was over the line in Burram, and of course he was the sprint winner in Goiânia, still seeking his first Grand Prix top 3 of the campaign so far. Lacking top 3s on Sundays has certainly not been an issue for the factory Aprilia team, and this rider on screens right now, Marco Bezzecchi, who has led the last 121 Grand Prix laps, just the 8th different rider, as mentioned, to win 5 Grand Prix in a row. Bez now part of a very elite and illustrious club which features some of the best to ever do it: Agostini, Duke, Harewood, Surtees, Doohan, Marquez and Rossi. Tomorrow, could he be just the 7th rider in history to win 6 in a row? Certainly got a great chance heading the 2nd row of the grid in 4th place. It is the first time since the Sepang that Bezzecchi has not qualified on the front row of the grid, although he did of course start 4th for the Grand Prix in Austin recently after a penalty in practice.
So here is Fabio de Gianantonio. It's not a 3rd consecutive pole, but it is a 3rd consecutive front row start. And I guess we're going to find out, perhaps not so much in the sprint today, but we'll certainly find out tomorrow just how much of Marc Marquez's pole position was weather assisted, or whether he genuinely does have the pace to challenge for victory once again. Because Marc Marquez wasn't all that confident about his prospects yesterday. Not as confident as Fabio de Gianantonio was from the outside of that front row. Between them, we will see Johann Zarco. We are looking now down on the LCR box right now. Johann Zarco, kind of conditions in qualifying this morning that feel tailor-made for Johann Zarco, and he did not disappoint. He
was 3rd fastest in the wets in FP2 this morning, qualified 2nd on the grid, having come out of Q1 with the fastest time. He's a wily old campaigner, isn't he? 35 years of age now, Zarco, using every ounce of experience this morning to just judge where the grip was on offer around this 4.4 kilometre Jerez circuit. At one stage, he really fancied having a pop at Marc Marquez's 1:48.087. He was on course potentially for his first pole position in 4 years before he lost the front. Big front end slide in the final corner. But it is his first front row start in 15 Grand Prix since the Sachsenring in Germany last summer. His best ever qualifying performance in MotoGP here in Jerez.
And is he going to act as a bit of a cork in the bottle to allow Marc Marquez to escape this afternoon and tomorrow? That has to be a question going into the sprint. Surely that will be the target of Gianantonio Bezzecchi, Alex Marquez and Pedro Acosta, who start right behind Johann Zarco. Surely if Marc Marquez gets the whole shot, that quartet behind Zarco know that they have to pass that Honda as soon as possible if they are to keep up with Marc Marquez this afternoon.
Alex Marquez on practice Friday in full dry conditions, if not sunny conditions, under the heavy cloud yesterday. It was Alex who completely dominated proceedings, leading the way on Friday. Certainly didn't help himself this morning in a push for the front right of the grid or better. A crash in Q2 in those tricky conditions at turn 9. At one stage, Alex was plummeting down the order. He did recover, and a late 1:49.146, actually on his very last lap of the session, did get Alex up to 5th on the grid. A nice bit of late damage limitation as far as that 2025 Spanish Grand Prix winner is concerned. We've just seen Jorge Martin venturing out on circuit. We're getting ready to head out on circuit. Martin's going to start today's sprint heading row 3. The Martinator qualifying in 7th place on his RSGP. And if you're joining us for the first time this weekend, after he balked Alex Marquez in practice yesterday afternoon, going through turns 3 and 4, for tomorrow's feature 25-lap full Grand Prix, Jorge Martin has been hit with a 3-place grid penalty. So tomorrow he will start from the head of row 4 in 10th place. And another Spaniard, as we feared, who's been in hot water, Lewis, having ignored the black flag with the orange disc after a crash at turn 3 this morning. Joan Mir, we expected him to be in a bit of hot water, and that has proven to be the case ahead of the Grand Prix tomorrow. Yeah,
scorchingly hot water, sadly, for Joan Mir, although I don't think he can really blame anyone but himself. A double long lap penalty that he'll have to serve in tomorrow's Spanish Grand Prix, and he's already up against it from 14th place on the grid. It is a total no-no to continue riding around the racetrack when the black and orange flag or light panel is displayed, because it tells you that you need to get off the racetrack for the safety of other competitors. This is perhaps the highlight of the day, though. Top pro Razbat, who might have only qualified in 19th place on the grid, but if style points were enough to get you up the grid, then Top Rack would be on pole position.
This is insane. This is truly unbelievable, isn't it? 67 degrees of lean angle. That is how you defy the laws of gravity, the laws of physics. Somehow, I'm not even quite sure right now, Toprak Razgatlioglu will believe how he pulled that one up on his left elbow and his left knee, but he did. It was a spectacular save. He looked strong in the FP2 this morning, didn't he? In the full wet conditions, did Toprak. Of course, twice crowned World Superbike champion right here in Jerez. He was 6th quickest this morning. Unfortunately, unable to convert that kind of pace in drying conditions when he was in Q1. The Turk will fire away from 19th on the grid. Worst position, unfortunately, for his Prima Pramac Yamaha colleague Jack Miller, who himself had a fall in Q1 at turn 13. Another Yamaha rider, Miller, who is really suffering right now. Jack's going to go from 22nd place on the grid, his lowest qualifying in 11 years since the Japanese Grand Prix at 2015. Only the 9th time in what's going to be his 202nd MotoGP start that Miller finds himself starting outside of the top 20.
Yeah, a couple of riders who really did pay a heavy price for crashes at the wrong moment of qualifying one. Diogo Moreira, the other. The Honda LCR rider will start behind Miller at the very back of the grid in 23rd place. So a weekend that promised a lot for Honda. Certainly had parts of practice yesterday when they looked like they might get as many as 3 bikes through to qualifying 2. As it is, the first Honda on the grid for this afternoon sprint is Joan Mir in 14th place.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking about the meaning of the sort of the meatball flag as it's known. Basically, this is what the penalty explanation was released by the FIM stewards. The flag informs a rider that their motorcycle has mechanical problems likely to endanger themselves or others, and that he must immediately leave the track, which is precisely what Mr. Johann did not do. The reason why he has the double long lap coming his way tomorrow. So for just the third time in his MotoGP career, Marc Marquez finds himself on pole position here in Jerez. Well, we've got two LCR Hondas at opposite ends of the grid, haven't we? With Johann Zarco on the front row, unfortunately Diogo Moreira on the back row, and experience gaining exercise once again coming up for the Brazilian rookie. Let's get his thoughts from Jack.
Yeah, less than ideal morning for Diogo, but the only way forwards now. What's the plan for the sprint coming up, and how different did track conditions feel compared to yesterday on the outlap then?
Yeah, I mean, the strategy for today will be, push already the first lap to, to the last one. And I mean, I will try, because at the end we don't lose nothing, so I'm gonna try to overtake the people, and let's see.
Good luck, have fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, all he can do is get his head down and try and pick off a few riders ahead of him, Diogo Moreira. I wonder if he can get himself up into P13. He needs to recover 10 places, because he has been 13th in 4 of our opening 6 events so far this season. 13th on debut in both the Sprint and the Grand Prix in Thailand, and that's been followed up by 13th places in our most 2 recent Grand Prix in front of his home crowd in Goiânia, and of course last time out in Austin. As mentioned, the LCR Honda riders at complete opposite ends of the grid. Johann Zarco's 31st front row start in the MotoGP World Championship. Never had a sprint podium, has the Frenchman.
Yeah, best of 4th so far in the sprint era for Johann Zarco. 4th is where we find the World Championship leader on the grid. Sundays haven't been the problem, as I'm sure you're aware. He's led every lap on a Sunday so far this season, but it's fair to say he has dropped a few points in the sprints so far this season. 12 of them in the first sprint in Buriram, and certainly a minimum 7 in Austin last time out. Here's your grid: Marc Marquez, Johann Zarco and Fabio Di Giannantonio on the front row of the grid. World Championship leader Marco Bezzecchi heads row 2. He's got Alex Marquez and Pedro Acosta behind him. On the third row of the grid, you can see Jorge Martin, Enea Bastianini and Raul Fernandez. Igor does not start from where he appeared on that graphic. He's actually on the 5th row of the grid. Some water in the works, so we'll get the grid up back for you in just a moment. While we get to the bottom of that problem, let's head down to the grid and find out whether Marco Bezzecchi can move forward from 4th. Paolo Bonora speaking to Jack.
Yeah, 2nd row of the grid for Marco, 3rd row of the grid for Jorge, under skies that are getting ever greyer by the minute, Paolo. I think we're in for an interesting sprint. What do we have in store here?
Yeah, grey clouds for sure. So difficult to understand what the weather forecast will be. By the way, we hope that it remains dry for all the spring. We are confident about the race pace, despite of the not a very good lap time qualification during this morning. But by the way, we did a step forward compared the yesterday setup and feeling about our rider, so quite confident about it.
We know in terms of the championship, Marco has been brilliant on Sunday, but work needs to be done in Saturday's sprint. So is he mentally thinking about today differently to the opening 3?
I think so, because compared the first 3 races where he had better race pace compare probably his competitor, today he has to fight a little bit more, so probably he will be inside of the group in the first part of the race, so it will be quite different from the previous races.
Thanks, Paolo. Good luck. Thanks.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to a pretty boss, Paolo Bonora. Just there on screens, the grid graphic running through the order. I guess some of you will have noticed that our 2025 pole starter, Fabio Quartararo, way down the order in 17th place on the grid. His lowest qualifying in 29 Grand Prix since Phillip Island at the back end of 2024 for the 27-year-old Frenchman, whose patience looks to have finally snapped with what is the underperforming and rather uncompetitive new V4-powered YZF Star M1. No problems there inside the VR46 garage for Fabio Di Giannantonio, who looks the epitome of cool, calm and relaxed, and why would he not be going away from the front row of the grid for the third race in a row. Alex Marquez then has a little bit more work to do than I'm sure he would have liked in this sprint, having qualified on the middle of the second row in fifth, particularly given how strong he was in the dry yesterday, although that performance yesterday afternoon does bode well if we do get a dry sprint. What are the thoughts of the boss, Michele Massini, with Jack?
Yeah, he is indeed. Super strong Friday for Alex, the fastest man out there. Mark labelled him the favourite. He gets the dry conditions he wants, Michele. So what is his plan for the upcoming sprint?
So for sure we know that we have the speed on the dry, so we try at least to stay in the top 3 today, and we know also that we can manage well the used tire on the dry, so I think that will be crucial, of course, like always, the first lap.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Gresini boss Michele Massini. Yeah, there is no doubting Alex Marquez's pace in the dry yesterday was pretty frightening. If you're lining up on the grid next to Alex, the Fermin Aldeguer fans are out in full voice. The yellow-clad Aldeguer fan supporting the number 54. Couple of tumbles, though, here today in the wet conditions this morning for the 21-year-old. He was down at turn 13 in FP2, and then his hopes of qualifying higher than 12th in Q2 were pretty much ended when he was on the floor once again at turn 8.
12th place then he starts for the sprint, and I guess points will be the target for Fermin Aldeguer from there. Toprak, who's watching from the relative tranquility of his Pramac box, as covered earlier on after the incredible acrobatics from Toprak earlier on. A little bit of a return to reality in the qualifying session. He starts from 19th place on the grid, 1 place behind Frankie Morbidelli for VR46 in P18. The other VR46 Ducatis on the front row, Fabio Di Giannantonio. Pablo Nieto's with Jack. Yeah,
well, Saturday so far in 2026 have been about Fabio Di Giannantonio versus Marc Marquez. We're treated to a battle in Brazil. We're treated to a coming together in Austin. It looks as though the two of them are going to clash again here, Pablo.
I wish, because I love it. I love it when you have this kind of fights, and we are making this kind of fight for the podium, so this is very, very important. We know that it's going to be very hard. Mark here are super fast. Also, Zarco makes an amazing qualifying. It's going to be hard, but we will see what happens.
You, like everybody else, is looking upwards at the sky from your weather radar. Are we going to get any rain?
Could be, but we are really, really focused on dry condition. If it starts raining, we are ready. So at the moment, I say to the rider, don't worry, we have to be focused for dry condition, then we will see what happens.
Thanks, Pablo. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to VR46 boss Pablo Nieto. Didier was really heaping praise on the strategy of his crew this morning when he got on that front row grid. They left him out on his second soft tyre pretty late on, and he said they called it absolutely bang on the money. Nice shot inside the Pramac Yamaha garage there. We know that a very close ally, manager and mentor to Toprak Razgatlioglu is former World Supersport King, of course, Kenan Softwoglu. Joining the garage there with some support is Kenan's 7-year-old son, Zane Softwoglu, who I'm sure is very familiar to many of you who follow the young fella on social media. 5.1 million followers on Instagram, and he's already a bit of a stunt king to rival Toprak. He's a brave young fella, I think it's fair to say. Brave in the conditions, in the tricky conditions this morning in the wet, was Johann Zarco to put himself on the front row of the grid for the first time in almost 12 months. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, LCR Honda's Lucio, checking on him with Jack.
Yes, Lucio just gets a word of good luck from MotoGP Hall of Famer Giacomo Agostini. Johann did an unbelievable job this morning, Lucio, to stick it on the front row of the grid. I spoke to him in a lunchtime break, and he said, although there's no rain, I was pretty strong on rhythm yesterday. He feels that despite these dry conditions, he's still well in the fight. Do you agree?
I mean, definitely for tomorrow with the medium tire and with the medium rear tire, I think we showed that we have not bad pace. However, with the soft slick, I think yesterday the other were a little bit stronger than us. So what we explained to him, that for us is very important, you know, to finish the race and to stay possibly in the top 8, but you know, not necessarily look for more. And then tomorrow maybe we have a slightly better chance.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Lucio. Good luck.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Lucio checking out. So yeah, maybe hopes of Zarco hanging in for the podium battle slightly more favourable tomorrow over the longer distance. 25 laps tomorrow will be the full race distance. I don't know if it's me here in the commentary box, just perched above the main grandstand opposite pit lane, but those sort of nice little pockets of blue sky seem to be getting less and less, and there's some rather ominous and threatening looking grey clouds, which all of a sudden are starting to sort of close in on the Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto.
Yeah, when Jack asked Pablo Nieto, he didn't sound awfully confident, did he, that it's going to stay dry. It's worth reminding you that flag-to-flag rules do still apply in the sprint, even over the shorter 12-lap distance. So, as always, the marshals will put the white flag with the red cross, then the white flag to indicate that riders can change bikes, because this will obviously be declared a dry sprint. Of course, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but flag-to-flag rules do still apply.
Can you believe it? Fabio Quartararo strolling down pit lane on pole position. Here he was 12 months ago. He was on the podium second in the Grand Prix to Alex Marquez 12 months ago. Boy, what would he give for that? Anything close to those kind of results right now as he tries to make any kind of headway on the currently being developed V4 Yamaha, Goiânia and Kota. First time in his MotoGP career that Fabio Quartararo has finished 2 races in a row outside of the points. Tough times indeed for the recently turned 27-year-old Frenchman. He'll be hoping for some kind of boost, some kind of confidence lift before he heads home to the French Grand Prix in Le Mans in a couple of weeks' time.
Brad Binder looking pensive as he sits on the 5th row of the grid, 13th for him. He's also been on the floor so far today, crashed right at the end of free practice too, over at the Jorge Martinez Aspar corner. Yeah, 13th might not sound particularly special for Brad Binder, but it is his best qualifying since the season opener in Buriram, and of course we know he has pedigree around here. The first rider to win a sprint here at Jerez.
Yeah, that sprint in 2023 remains the closest sprint podium we have ever witnessed. What is this? Sprint number 65, I believe. That's an epic fight on that occasion back in 2023 involving Binder, Bagnaia and Martin. Starting on the 4th row of the grid is Pecco Bagnaia. He will get pushed up 1 row tomorrow for the main Grand Prix, courtesy of Jorge Martin's incoming penalty. But his equal worst qualifying performance in MotoGP here in Jerez. He was 10th on the grid 7 years ago in his debut year back in 2019. He does bring a quite brilliant record though to this Spanish Grand Prix. Certainly on Sundays does the 29-year-old Italian. No lower than 3rd in the last 5. A 3 times winner here, 2022, 2023, 2024. A couple of those were in absolute classics as well.
Spots of rain, we understand, from Jack Appleyard, who is leaving the grid as we speak. Very, very light, but just something to occupy the minds and add to what is already a tense situation on that grid. I think if you asked H31 of the 23 riders on that grid, they would want a dry sprint. Are they going to get their wish?
Nothing worse than this situation is that just as it's about to go lights out, just at the height of tension, when the butterflies, you're really trying to keep them under control, churning inside your stomach, to see rain spots on the screen, rain spots on your visor. Just about the worst possible scenario to face for these MotoGP riders. Fabio de Gianantonio then. He has already had some epic tussles with Marc Marquez in sprint so far this year. Ayagura, fair to say, seemed like he was lacking a bit of belief, a bit of trust in that Aprilia RSGP in the wet conditions this morning. He was at the wrong end of Q2, starting in 11th place for the Trackhouse squad. He was 3 seconds behind the pole time of Marc Marquez, and only got better because he did put a 151.110 in on his 7th lap of the session. His last lap, at one stage, he was almost 5 seconds back of the best speed.
So at the moment, only very light spots of rain. Nothing at this stage that would be heavy enough to even consider them delaying the start. It would have to absolutely chuck it down at this stage for them to consider that. The sprint, as mentioned, has already been declared dry. So it will be a case at the moment of the riders trusting their own instincts, trusting the grip levels underneath them, and almost trying to block out whatever spots of rain land on their visor. And I guess the warm-up lap will be quite crucial just to understand if the grip levels have changed at all since they left the pit lane for the sighting lap around about 20 minutes ago. Yeah, the old eyes weren't deceiving me. It definitely has gone a lot darker. Some of the thick, heavy, dark clouds that have been off into the distance for a period of time now really are just pretty much completely plonked on top of this Circuito de Jerez Angel Nieto.
So with, what, 2.5 minutes until it's lights out, what are the elements going to throw at the world's best riders here at one of the world's best circuits? Third successive front row in 2026 for Fabio Di Giannantonio. His 8th front row in the MotoGP World Championship. A first front row since Germany last year for LCR Honda rider Johann Zarco. A first front row since the Hungarian Grand Prix at Balaton Park last August for Marc Marquez. His 3rd pole position here in Jerez. The crowd will erupt if he's able to take his 17th sprint win here in southern Spain. Marc on pole in Jerez.